Let's start today's lecture by talking about how immigration has really helped shape who we are as a country. Canada's identity as a multicultural nation didn't just happen by accident. It's the result of many waves of immigration over time. People from all over the world have come here and made huge contributions, not just in terms of population, but in shaping our culture, economy, politics, you name it. As we get into the history of Canada's immigration policies and how people come to live here, I want you to keep in mind that these aren't just policies or statistics. Behind every immigration or refugee case, there's a human story. And unless you're Indigenous, your family probably has its own story about how and why they came to Canada and what that experience was like. Some of the most powerful stories come from those forced to migrate, people fleeing war, violence, or disaster. One image that really struck the world was the photo of Alan Kurdi, the little Syrian boy who drowned while trying to reach safety. That image broke through a lot of the political noise and got people, regular folks, and world leaders alike to pay attention and actually do something. Moments like that remind us why Canada has laws like the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. It's not just about who gets in or how. They reflect our responsibility to help people in crisis and to live up to international human rights standards. So as we go through this section, let's not lose sight of the human side of immigration. These are real people with real struggles and hopes. To begin with, we'll take a look at how immigration policy in Canada has evolved and what that tells us about who's been welcomed and who's been left out. This history is really about how Canada has decided who gets in and who doesn't. And it reflects a lot about our values, fears, and goals at different times. We can break it down into 9 periods, starting in 1867, right after Confederation. Back then, immigration was all about settling the West. Canada needed farmers and workers, so we encouraged immigration mostly from places like Britain, the US, and parts of Europe. But at the same time, the government imposed a head tax on Chinese immigrants, starting at $50 and jumping to $500 by 1903. That tax didn't apply to people from preferred countries, which shows how immigration was racialized right from the start. In the next period, from 1919 to 1929, things got more selective. Canada introduced literacy tests and ranked source countries as preferred or non-preferred. Again, this was a way to keep out certain groups while welcoming others who were seen as a better fit. Then came the Depression and World War II, from 1930 to 1945. Immigration nearly shut down unless you were from Britain or the US. The country's focus turned inward because of economic hardship and global instability. But after the war, from 1946 to 1962, Canada opened up again, especially to Europeans who'd been displaced by the war. War brides and refugees made up a big part of this wave. Still, the official line was that immigration should help improve the economy, but not change the basic character of Canada, which clearly meant keeping things mostly white and European. That started to change in 1962 when Canada finally scrapped its explicitly racist policies. Instead, immigration was based on skills and education, not race or origin. In 1967, the point system was introduced, so people were judged by things like their language ability, job prospects, and education. That's still how we select skilled immigrants today. In the 1970s and early 80s, the Immigration Act of 1976 brought in the goals we still see today: family reunification, humanitarian help, and contributing to Canada's economy and culture. The next major shift came in 1985 with the Singh decision. The courts ruled that refugee claimants had the right to a full hearing, which led to the creation of the Immigration and Refugee Board. Refugee Rights Day on April 4th marks that decision. From the 90s into the 2000s, Canada passed the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. The point system was tweaked again to target younger bilingual applicants. We also started using more temporary foreign workers and reduced family sponsorships. Refugee definitions expanded too, including those protected under international laws against torture. And finally, since 2010, we've seen more reforms, like renaming the department to include refugees and updating policies to respond to major crises like the war in Syria. Canada made a big move in 2016 by resettling around 44,000 Syrian refugees. That included both government and privately sponsored cases. So overall, you can see how immigration policy in Canada has shifted between opening up and closing down, depending on what was happening economically, politically, and socially at the time. And although we've come a long way from head taxes and exclusion laws, these policies still tell us a lot about the challenges and the progress we've made. Even though Canada has benefited greatly from immigration, our policies haven't always reflected fairness or openness. In fact, for a long time, immigration rules were designed to exclude people based on race, religion, and ethnicity. Let's start with the Komagata Maru incident in 1914. A ship carrying 376 passengers, mostly Sikhs from British India, was denied entry and forced to return. When they got back, many were jailed and some were killed. Canada officially apologized, eventually. Then there's the Chinese head tax, first imposed in 1885 and later raised to $500, a massive amount at the time. After that came the Chinese Exclusion Act, which banned almost all Chinese immigration until 1947. A formal apology and financial compensation finally came in 2006. During World War II, Japanese Canadians, citizens and immigrants alike, were seen as threats. More than 22,000 were sent to internment camps, and their properties were taken. A government apology and financial redress followed in 1988. Another tragic example is the story of the MS St. Louis. In 1939, Canada turned away a ship of 907 Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi Germany. Many were later killed in the Holocaust. It wasn't until 2018 that a formal apology was finally made for this failure. So yes, Canada has made apologies, but not always right away, and not always to everyone. These moments remind us that immigration policy has often reflected exclusionary values. Acknowledging this is an important step in building a more just future. Next, let's look at who's coming to Canada and how they get here. Nearly 1 in 5 people in Canada today is an immigrant, and that number is expected to grow to 1 in 4 by 2031. Most immigrants live in big cities like Toronto, Montreal, or Vancouver, and they come from more than 200 different countries and speak over 200 languages. That's a lot of diversity. People come to Canada for all kinds of reasons. Some want to work or study, others are reuniting with family, and many are looking for protection. The main law that regulates this is the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, or IRPA, which was passed in 2001. It aims to help build Canada's economy, support family reunification, and meet our humanitarian commitments. There are 3 major pathways for someone looking to immigrate permanently. First, there's the family class, where Canadian citizens or permanent residents sponsor a spouse, child, or parent. The sponsor promises to support them financially. Second is the economic class, which includes skilled workers, tradespeople, recent graduates with work experience, and people nominated by provinces to meet local job needs. These folks apply through the express entry system. There are also business-focused pathways like startup visas and self-employment options, and specialized caregiver programs. And then there's the refugee and protected persons route. Canada resettles refugees in several ways. Some are sponsored by the government, some by private groups, and others are referred through a joint sponsorship model. People can also claim refugee status upon arrival in Canada. If they qualify, they're allowed to stay as protected persons. 2 more laws, the Balanced Refugee Reform Act and the Protecting Canada's Immigration System Act, were passed to speed up refugee claims, reduce abuse of the system, and add security steps like biometrics. In short, Canada offers a wide range of pathways for people to come here, and each one reflects a different kind of need or opportunity. Most people immigrating to Canada come under the economic class, meaning they're selected for their skills and potential contributions to the workforce. The group of refugees and protected persons is much smaller by comparison, though we saw an increase in 2016 due to the government's response to the Syrian refugee crisis. Now let's address some common myths about refugees and immigrants. First, there's a belief that refugees cut the line. In reality, their urgent need for safety means they can't wait in the same way as others. Applying from overseas isn't always possible or safe, especially when embassy offices are watched by hostile forces. Then there's the claim that Canada already does enough. While we've taken steps, especially for Syrians, our numbers are modest compared to global needs. In 2015, we accepted just over 32,000 refugees, small given the millions displaced worldwide. Some ask why we help refugees when Canadians are also in need. But as a signatory to the UN Refugee Convention, Canada has a legal and moral duty to offer protection. It's about global responsibility. Another stereotype involves judging a refugee's legitimacy by their clothes or car. Being at risk of persecution isn't about wealth. Many refugees are educated professionals who fled violence, not poverty. Refugee camps also come up. People sometimes ask why refugees can't just stay there. The reality? Camps are often overcrowded, unsafe, and restrictive, and many people spend over a decade in them. Concerns about bogus refugees or security threats? Every asylum seeker undergoes a detailed screening process. Canada's system filters out those who pose a risk through CSIS and immigration checks. Finally, some worry that immigrants take jobs, but that's based on the outdated lump of labor idea that there's only so much work to go around. In fact, immigrants boost the economy, pay taxes, and help fill key labor gaps. Settlement in Canada is more than just moving in and getting a job. It's a long-term, two-way process where both newcomers and society adapt and benefit from each other. According to agencies like OCASI and the Canadian Council for Refugees, settlement moves through 3 stages: acclimatization, adaptation, and finally, integration. But this isn't a one-size-fits-all journey. Each newcomer's path is unique. One of the first major steps is language acquisition. Learning English or French is key to navigating housing, employment, education, and healthcare. But even with language skills, settlement doesn't always go smoothly. Challenges can surface long after arrival. This two-way process isn't about assimilation. It's not about newcomers abandoning their culture. Instead, Canadian society must also evolve by embracing new communities and adjusting norms. Historically, Canada shifted from demanding cultural conformity to officially embracing multiculturalism in 1971. Still, remnants of past exclusion and more recent policy changes remind us that we're always evolving. How well newcomers settle depends on several things: whether they chose to migrate or were forced to, their personal resilience, the reception they get from society, and the resources available to support them. Refugees often carry trauma from war, torture, or loss. Voluntary migrants typically have more time to prepare emotionally and logistically, which can ease the transition. Migration can be emotionally intense, leaving behind family, friends, culture, and even a familiar language system. These losses take a toll, and the stress of starting over can affect mental and physical health. Research shows that while newcomers often arrive in better health than native-born Canadians, this declines over time, partly due to the stresses of integration. That's where Canada's community-based settlement sector steps in. These nonprofit organizations help newcomers with everything from language classes to job searches to healthcare navigation. Importantly, they also make sure newcomers have a say in how services are run, making the process truly collaborative. To conclude the lecture on immigration, let's take a closer look at 3 key contemporary migration issues in Canada: the Syrian refugee response, the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, and credential recognition. First, the Syrian refugee crisis. Since the outbreak of civil war in Syria in 2011, millions have been displaced. By mid-2016, Canada committed to welcoming around 44,000 Syrian refugees, 25,000 of them through government sponsorship, with the rest privately or jointly sponsored. The image of a young boy who drowned during his family's attempt to flee became a powerful symbol that spurred Canadian public action. Many refugees expressed deep gratitude for the safety and stability Canada offered. But after the initial relief, longer-term challenges emerge: accessing language classes, finding work, dealing with trauma, and reuniting with family. Next is the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. It brings in workers through 2 streams, TFW and the International Mobility Program. While these workers help fill immediate gaps in Canada's labor force, the programs are often criticized as being short-sighted. Critics argue they rely on importing cheap labor without investing in long-term integration. To address this, Canada created the Canadian Experience Class, allowing some temporary workers to apply for permanent residence. Another measure is the Labor Market Impact Assessment, which ensures Canadian workers aren't overlooked when employers seek to hire abroad. Finally, let's talk about credential recognition. It remains one of the biggest barriers for immigrant professionals in Canada. Many skilled immigrants arrive with strong educational and professional backgrounds, doctors, engineers, MBAs, but end up in low-skilled jobs due to non-recognition of foreign credentials. Despite our need for skilled labor, there's often a disconnect between qualifications and employment opportunities. This issue is highlighted in media campaigns and studies that show highly trained professionals driving cabs or cleaning offices. It's not just about paperwork. It's a loss of human potential and a misalignment between immigration policy and labor market realities.